Hey everyone, and welcome back. If you're a focused learner trying to really wrap your head around the mathematical and computational forces shaping our reality right now, well, you're in exactly the right place. In this explainer, we're embarking on a pretty fascinating journey. We're going to trace the entire evolution of neural networks. We'll start from their earliest biological inspirations and go all the way up to the massive, complex systems running today's world.
To understand why all this history actually matters, just think about this number for a second. According to the Stanford 2026 AI Index report, in the year 2025 alone, U.S. private investment in artificial intelligence reached an absolutely astonishing $285.9 billion. That's billion with a B. But to truly grasp the sheer power behind that staggering financial commitment, we really have to go back to the beginning. We need to understand the underlying architecture that makes it all possible.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is the roadmap for our explainer today. We'll trace this whole problem-solution evolution across 6 distinct eras. The first, artificial neurons, backpropagation and deep learning, vision and memory networks, the transformer architecture revolution, fine-tuning and physical reality, and finally, the state of AI today. Let's get right to it. Section 1. The first artificial neurons.
Long before we had these billion-parameter generative models, researchers needed a baseline. And well, they found it by looking at the human brain. To establish this, let's pull from Coursera's curriculum to distinguish between traditional machine learning and deep learning. So, standard machine learning adapts with minimal human interference to find simple linear correlations. And honestly, it can usually just run on a standard CPU. Deep learning, however, takes a vastly different approach. It uses artificial neural networks to actually mimic the brain's learning process. This lets it handle incredibly complex, nonlinear correlations. But as a trade-off, it requires specialized GPUs and massive amounts of data. The roots of this deep learning approach actually go back way further than you might think. Back in 1943, Warren McCulloch and Walter Pitts developed the very first mathematical model of artificial neurons. And that paved the way for Frank Rosenblatt's perceptron in 1958, which was an early single-layer neural network. But there was a catch. These early concepts hit a massive wall. The simple perceptron was strictly restricted to solving only linearly separable problems. It literally just couldn't handle complex, layered logic. And that limitation triggered a long, dry period of reduced funding and interest known as an AI winter that lasted all the way until the 1980s.
Section 2. Backpropagation and deep learning. So, what thawed the AI winter? The crucial breakthrough that finally allowed networks to successfully use multiple hidden layers came down to one absolutely vital concept: backpropagation. Popularized in a famous 1986 paper by David Rumelhart, Jeffrey Hinton, and Ronald Williams, this algorithm completely solved the early perceptron's bottleneck. Instead of a single layer trying to figure out the whole shebang, you could now have multi-layer networks. If the network made a mistake, the backpropagation algorithm would calculate the error and propagate those error gradients backward through the network, from the output all the way back to the input, tweaking the connections along the way. The process operates in this brilliant 5-step loop. Step 1, you input your data. Step 2, the data passes forward through multiple hidden layers of nodes. Step 3, an activation function is applied to decide exactly what information gets to move forward. Step 4, the network generates a predicted output. And then step 5, this is the magic of backpropagation. The network checks its prediction against the correct answer, calculates the error, and propagates that error backward to adjust the weights of the nodes. It literally learns from its mistakes. Section 3, vision and memory networks. Once networks could learn deeply, researchers realized they needed them to specialize. As data became more and more complex, a one-size-fits-all network just wasn't going to cut it anymore. We needed systems designed for specific types of data, like localized pixels in an image or sequential frames in a video. And this led to 2 major architectural splits. First, we have convolutional neural networks, or CNNs. In 1990, Jan LeCoux successfully showed that CNNs could recognize handwritten digits by efficiently processing local visual patterns. They basically became the undisputed kings of image processing. Then we have recurrent neural networks, or RNNs. These feed their output back into their input, creating a sort of short-term memory that's perfect for sequential data like text or speech. And a highly specialized type of RNN, called long short-term memory networks, or LSTMs, were developed specifically to solve the vanishing gradient problem. This allowed machines to retain information over much longer sequences. Section 4, the transformer architecture revolution. But, even LSTMs had their limits. By the 2010s, we were trying to process massive amounts of text, and RNNs were just too slow. Why? Because they had to read data sequentially, word by word. So researchers hit a massive roadblock. Think about it. If reading word by word is way too slow, how do machines process entire sequences at once? How do you build a model that can look at an entire paragraph simultaneously to understand the context of every single word? The solution arrived in a landmark 2017 paper called Attention is All You Need, and it birthed the transformer architecture. This was a real game changer. Transformers completely ditch the recurrence of RNNs. Instead, they rely entirely on something called an attention mechanism to draw global dependencies between input and output. This single breakthrough is the absolute foundation of every modern generative AI system you use today. So how does this actually work under the hood? Well, it uses a self-attention mechanism that relates different token positions within a single sequence. Essentially, it generates probabilities for specific queries to attend to specific keys, meaning the network actually learns which words in a sentence matter most to each other, regardless of how far apart they are. Now, what's absolutely vital here is an optimization technique called KV caching, which was highlighted by Google. Because transformers are autoregressive, meaning they generate one token at a time, KV caching saves the interim key and value matrices from previous tokens. This completely avoids redundant computations, making text generation incredibly fast and efficient.
Section 5. Fine-tuning and physical reality.
Of course, building a massive, blazing fast text generator is really only half the battle. If you don't control it, it's just going to generate plausible-sounding nonsense. So to stop these massive models from hallucinating or outputting harmful content, researchers use a technique called reinforcement learning from human feedback, or RLHF. Traditionally, reinforcement learning gave a reward at the very end of a task, what's known as a sparse reward. But recent research shows how RLHF can be optimized specifically for transformers. Because transformers maintain attention weights for each token, researchers can use those weights to attribute the overall reward signal down to individual tokens. This denser token-level reward makes the model significantly more truthful, useful, and safe. Okay, now this next part absolutely blew my mind. What's truly fascinating is the physical reality of what happens when you run these models on modern silicon. We usually think of software as just, math. But on modern chips below 28 nanometers, we are literally controlling the flow of massive amounts of electrons. A recent physics paper on Archive pointed out that at this microscopic level, intelligent machines and transformers should actually be modeled physically as open quantum systems. They describe the physical model operating in a Fock space over the Hilbert space of tokens. So when you're typing a prompt into a large language model, you are fundamentally interacting with an applied quantum system. How wild is that? Section 6, the state of AI today. From artificial neurons in the 1940s to open quantum systems today, it has been an incredible journey. But let's anchor all this theoretical history into some tangible real-world data from the Stanford 2026 AI Index report. The data gives us a really fascinating snapshot of the global AI landscape, specifically comparing the United States and China. Looking at private AI investment in 2025, the U.S. leads massively with $285.9 billion compared to China's $12.4 billion. However, when you look at top model performance, the gap has effectively closed. In February 2025, a Chinese model actually matched the top U.S. model, briefly. And as of March 2026, the U.S. lead is a mere 2.7%. The data clearly shows differing strengths here. The U.S. produces more top-tier models and high-impact patents, while China leads in total publication volume, citations, and overall patent output. And the impact of this global race is just so evident across the entire economy. As of the Stanford report, organizational adoption of AI has hit an astounding 88%. This means the mathematical evolution we've been discussing today, from perceptrons to backpropagation to transformers, has fundamentally permeated how our global economy functions. It's no longer just a research project, it's infrastructure.
But despite this massive adoption and incredible technological evolution, we are left with a bit of a paradox. The Stanford report puts it perfectly. AI models can win a gold medal at the International Mathematical Olympiad, but cannot reliably tell time. An example of what researchers call the jagged frontier of AI. They can do PhD-level science, but they completely struggle with basic physical common sense. So, I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. As we continue to refine the transformer architecture and push the absolute boundaries of quantum hardware, will artificial intelligence eventually smooth out this jagged frontier? Or will human intelligence, born of biology rather than backpropagation, remain fundamentally distinct? Thanks so much for exploring this with me today.